Welcome, my friends, to the Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Today, my very special guest and friend is Scott Mickeljohn. Scott is the proprietor of Gojira Fx guitar pedals out of Scotland. I caught up with Scott to talk about his company, his custom builds, and approach to guitar effects. We also discussed the overall state of guitar gear as competition heats up across the world. And so, without further ado, here's the conversation with Scott. Well, folks, we're going to have a great show today, and this one is going to be very different. I'm going to depart from the typical conspiracy research and alternative research, and I'm going to talk to a friend of mine, Scott Mickeljohn, who is the proprietor of Gojira Fx guitar pedals out of Scotland. And recently, I guess about a month ago or so, maybe a little longer, Scott sent me two of his pedals, his distortion pedal and his 808 tube screamer. And I've been playing these pedals. I've been using them for the last few weeks, and I love them. They are great sounding pedals. And so what I wanted to do was just to catch up with Scott because musical instruments, as many of you know, I'm a guitar collector, and I'm even more fascinated by folks that are able to build things like guitar pedals, because this is something not within the realm of my awareness. You know, I just buy them and use them, but to actually make them is fascinating to me. So, Scott, welcome, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, Mike. It's a pleasure. Good to catch up with you.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's great. It really is. Now, Scott, how did you get into building guitar pedals? This is not something that a lot of people venture off into doing as a career or as a job.
Yeah, pedals, I've always, even since I played guitar since I was about 11 years old. And as soon as I got up to a kind of decent standard and started getting into the bands that I liked and stuff like that, I was always heavily influenced by bands that used a lot of pedals, a lot of fuzz. So I was always chasing that sound. Even before I didn't really know what pedals were, I was always doing weird things with my amp and my guitar to try and get different sounds out of it. And then when I did come across pedals, it's like it just opens up a whole new world, basically, for especially the type of music I was playing, which uses a lot of different modulation, guitar sounds and stuff. Yeah, so getting into pedals, I was always buying pedals and then getting annoyed with not being able to fix them myself and stuff like that, you know, and having a lot of friends in bands. And eventually I became the guy that if something broke, see if Scott can fix it, you know, because I did have a bit of a background in electronics. I worked as an electrician when I left school, so a slight background in electronics, and then managed to stumble into that. I managed to have a bit of a gap between employment, let's say, where I had a bit of time to sit down and say, right, let's try something new here, you know, let's try something that I want to do rather than just jumping into another job as well. So kind of worked out nicely, you know. It's something that I kind of fell into job-wise and something that I've always kind of wanted to do as well. It just didn't really hit home for me to do it until I got to about 30 years old.
Well, like I said, what I'm going to do, I mentioned to Scott before we get started here, folks, that what I will do at the tail end of this show is I will demonstrate the pedals. And again, I have the distortion pedal and the 808 screamer. Both are great pedals. So, Scott, I agree that there are times, actually there are many times, when you purchase a pedal expecting it to do something that is pleasing to your ear as a guitar player, right? As a musician. And then once you get the pedal and you're playing around with it, it's kind of like it's not really what I thought it was going to be. I'm not getting the sound that I want out of it, right? So how do you go about getting the sound that you want? I know this might get a little technical, but the components within a pedal, as an example, if we take a distortion pedal, and folks, here's the distortion pedal that Scott sent over to me, and we'll get into the artwork in a moment, but as you can see, this is the Sgt. Pepper album cover, and let me just pause here for a second and show the other pedal. This is the 808 tube screamer, and again, the artwork is custom, and Scott did this for me, and this is great. That's Billy, and again, Billy looking a little sad, I guess because he's disclosing. He's not really sure how people are going to take it. So how do you go about getting the sound that you want out of the pedal? So if it's a certain distortion sound that you're looking for, how do you do that?
A lot of it is total trial and error, is sitting down and experimenting. Thankfully, because there's been I didn't start doing it until quite recently, there's been so many people behind me, and because of the internet as well, that there's so many frameworks there that I can start from when I can go and look at a circuit, like an existing popular circuit, that I know is verified and works, and then I can start changing wee parts of it and work from there. So it's when I first started building them, it was find something like a tube screamer or another kind of distortion pedal, build it up, understand it, find out what's going on there, and then you can start experimenting a wee bit more. But still, it is a lot of trial and error. Like, absolutely. I mean, it's making the mistakes that I learn how to do things. So I've been lucky that there's so much information about it on the internet. I don't really like using forums and going into discussions about all the pedals and everything, but there's so much information of the schematics for absolutely everything out there. If you're willing to take the time, you can understand that language of a schematic. It's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle almost, and once you start getting into it. Fuzz and distortion pedals, I mean, you can't really experiment. When it gets into the modulation stuff, it's a bit more precise and finding out what you need for what job and stuff like that. But with the fuzz pedals, I mean, you can really get carried away with experimenting with different components and stuff like that. And so there's no shortage of experimentation with it, and that's how I've learned anyway. Just learn from my own mistakes, and I've been quite lucky as well that some guitar companies are very helpful.
Let me ask a question that I've always wondered. I know the answer now, but when I was growing up and playing in bands in the early days, I was not always able to distinguish or define the difference between a distortion pedal and an overdrive pedal.
Yeah.
What is the difference between buying a distortion pedal and an overdrive pedal? There has to be a difference, otherwise they wouldn't distinguish between distortion and overdrive.
I see it as a kind of like a spectrum, and overdrive's on the lighter side of the spectrum, distortion's on the heavier side of the spectrum, and then I know fuzz isn't exactly the same kind of thing, but it's as if fuzz is at the very end of the spectrum. It's just total noisy, So when it comes to overdrive sounds and distortion and even pedal sounds, it's so subjective, and this is why I don't get into the forums and all that as well, because it's what's the best overdrive pedal, and then you see people arguing for the next 50 minutes about what is or isn't an overdrive pedal,
I have a guitar channel, and there are many times when I will build a guitar or restore a guitar, or I'll put new pickups in it, and people will say or will ask, well, how come you don't do a demonstration with the guitar? The reason for that is, well, first of all, it takes time to do that, to set up and do all that stuff, right? So I have put some up there, folks, in case you're wondering, and I will put my guitar channel link in the description box below. The thing is, as you said, Scott, it's very subjective. So if I'm playing through a certain amp with certain effects, I don't really understand how anybody's going to discern what that means to them, because they don't have my configuration.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Even if they bought the same pedal, as an example, I have Scott's distortion pedal here, and even if they go out and buy this pedal, well, they may not be using the same settings that I have on the pedal. So it gets to be very granular. It is very subjective as far as the sound that you get. And one pedal that somebody loves, another person can not like at all, right?
Yeah, and when you do see pedal demos, most of the time, if it's quite a popular YouTube channel, the guy's plugging into a really expensive amplifier with a really expensive guitar, and he's like, here's my clean tone. Like, I can't afford your clean tone, So it's not going to compare to what anyone's got in their bedroom. So normally if I'm testing out the pedals, I run them through a couple of different amps. I've got a wee small one just for practicing in the house, and I can take them down to the studio and run them through at volume and stuff like that as well. So get to hear what they're like, and they behave totally different.
Yeah.
Different amplifiers completely. Orange amplifiers are so weird with some distortion pedals. I don't think they handle modulation particularly well either. Orange amplifiers, but they've got such a beautiful sound when it's just overdriven. But I've always seen pedals as more of a. When I've been building them, I've always had them as in a band situation in mind of how you can get about your different sounds live in a band, rather than, because you can do everything digitally nowadays as well in the bedroom. No, it doesn't always sound the same, but
I'm an old school amp guy. I don't like all of the sampling and all of the built-in effects. I don't like that. In fact, I find that many times I had a Spider 112 amp. I sold it about a month ago or so. I had it for a long time. It was one of my amps. I have maybe 4 or 5 amps. I finally got rid of it because I found that with all of those sampled amp sounds and the built-in effects that it conflicted many times, Scott, with my wah pedal. I could not get the wah pedal to sound right, you know. And so I concluded that it was because that there was a conflict between what the amp had component-wise as far as to create its sound and then the signal of the wah pedal going in. So I know I'm going to get people that are going to say that they don't have that problem, and that's great if you don't have that problem. I'm just saying that I've experienced it, not just with that amp, but with other amps. So I'm old school. I go back to the old days because, you know, folks, I'm not a young guy anymore. I'm 60, so I go back to the days of when the amp was just straightforward. You plug it in, you had a volume, you had your tone knobs, and you had some reverb, and that was about it. So I like creating the sound through my pedals, feeding it into an amplifier that essentially is just an amplifier. It's not anything else beyond that. So, and in fact, the amp that I like to use is a tube amp. It's a mono price. It's I think I got it for $225. It has lots of volume, and that's the one that I like to play through.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. I have more expensive amps, but sometimes more expensive doesn't mean better.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it does, you know, no question, but other times it doesn't mean that.
My favourite amplifier to play just in the house is a wee small Freshman's. A guy that lives in Scotland that builds them actually. So I thought I would try it out. And it's meant to be designed for electroacoustic guitars.
Yeah.
But it's really, really nice sounding just at low volume. It's got a lot of bass and everything. So I don't really own any particularly expensive guitars either. I do happen to have a very nice bass at the moment that I borrowed from someone, but to do a few pedal demos. But no, I play an Ibanez. That's my main guitar, and it was maybe about $300, and I wouldn't swap it for anything. It's got the most beautiful action on it I've ever played on a guitar.
Well, that's another thing maybe we can get into a little bit. Maybe we should talk about that now. Is that I've got some guitars that are on the more expensive side. I have a Gibson Standard T 2016. It's a beautiful guitar, but here's the thing: I have it. It's a beautiful guitar, but I don't play it. It's a very strange thing, you know. I prefer to play the guitars which are less expensive and the ones that I've actually invested time and effort into building or upgrading.
Yeah.
I really enjoy playing those, right? Versus something that's just off the shelf. But that's just my personal preference. But the thing, Scott, is that guitar prices have come down significantly, you know, from going back to years ago. You know, if you go back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you bought a cheap guitar, you pretty much got a cheap guitar.
Yeah.
Today, you could pick up a guitar for $200, $250, $300, let's say under $400, and you have yourself a very, very nice guitar. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think Gibson and Fender have kind of been their own worst enemy. I mean, when I was dealing with a few of the guitar shops in Scotland and speaking to them about sales of Gibsons and Fender, you were saying, are they still the main sellers, or is it these local luthiers and things like that? And they were saying Gibson and Fender, they make all their money out of t-shirts, badges, things like that nowadays. That's where most of their income comes from. So I think a lot of guitar shops are more inclined now to try and get the smaller companies in as well, especially with pedals as well.
Yeah.
There's no markup for them. There's no money to be made for a small guitar shop selling Boss pedals or something like that, which are great pedals, you know, and everybody wants them, but it's hard for the industry then, you know, for someone with a small shop. So the more they start getting smaller makers in, absolutely the greater it is for all of us. It means more choice as well.
Like I said, I have the genuine stuff. I mean, as far as the Gibsons and the Fenders, and some of them are on the more expensive side of the house. And don't get me wrong, they're very nice guitars. They play well. But I have a hard time reconciling the price differential. In other words, you might pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a Gibson. You might pay $1,000 to $1,500 for a Fender. But like you said, you could buy an Ibanez, or you could buy another brand of guitar at your local guitar shop for $300, $400. I guess maybe you could pick up subtle differences in why the $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 guitar is a better guitar.
Yeah.
You know, craftsmanship, wood, and stuff like that. But it's very hard to defend the difference in price.
Yeah.
So it's not $2,000 worth of enhancements or feel-good stuff, in my view. That's been my experience. So Gibson and I think Fender to a lesser degree, because Fender did a nice job with the whole Squire line of guitars.
Yeah, absolutely.
They did a nice job of introducing Squire and keeping that as basically their entry level, and really good guitars, nice guitars. They're well made.
Yeah.
But Gibson hung into that upper stratosphere paradigm for a long time, and it came back to, I think, to bite them big time. I don't follow them as closely as I used to these days. I know that they're under new management, so I don't know what their plans are going forward, whether they're going to farm out their guitars to lower cost countries. Everything used to be American made and all that, and I guess that was in their minds a way of maintaining or validating the reason for the prices that they were charging for the guitar, right? Made in America, so hey, you're going to pay more. But that model doesn't work too well when everybody else is farming the work out and eating your lunch.
Yep, absolutely.
So anyway, and like I said, folks, I own 5 Gibsons, and I love them. But I have other guitars that cost a lot less, and I love to play those equally as well.
Don't get me wrong, I would love one. I mean, my friend's got one. Whenever I play it, I'm so not used to the weight of his Les Paul. Like, whenever I put it on, it weighs an absolute ton to me. But it feels so lovely to play. That weight adds something to it, and they're beautiful.
Yeah, they are beautiful guitars. They really are. And maybe what I'll do is when I do the demo, I'll play my standard T, and
yeah, awesome.
You take a look at that.
What you were saying about the price difference is very much the same in the pedal world. There's a lot of pedal companies who have been lucky in recent years because certain bands and things like that have used their pedals in the market, and they've charged maybe $400 for the pedal, and I could sell it for $50.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Chinese, as an example, companies like Donner and Sonic Cake,
yeah,
they are coming in at a price point that is just wiping out the brands that are trying to get a premium for their pedals. And it was interesting, I'll go on Amazon every once in a while and I'll take a look at the reviews of these pedals. And for the most part, they're very, very positive.
Yeah.
4 stars, maybe some of them even pushing 5 stars. And you're picking these pedals up for $30, $40, $50, $60. Whereas an equivalent pedal by a company like MXR, or pick another brand, Boss, these pedals could cost 2 to 3 times the amount of money.
Yep.
And then you read the reviews on the higher priced pedals, and a lot of the reviews are mixed. Don't get me wrong, there are some good reviews, but then the reviews are not commensurate with a pedal that costs 2 to 3 times more than what a lot of these Chinese manufacturers are putting out these days. How is that for you, Scott, as far as the Chinese market? Do you find it something that you have to compete with, or are your guitar pedals priced at a point where you don't really have to worry about it? Because I believe your pricing is very good.
I just try and ignore it, basically. I just see it as that's not my market. I think the people really enjoy getting to speak to the person that's building their pedal and getting their own artwork on it and getting exactly what they want. And not everyone's face-to-face talking with me like that, but I think some people want to get away from the mass-produced stuff that's out there.
Yeah.
And I think one of I don't know which one it was, one of those small Chinese companies recently lost a legal case with Electro Harmonics because they cloned one of their ICs, one of their chips on a pedal. But it's always been the same with components, that someone steals the idea out of the factory and then goes and makes it down the road in China. It's always been that way.
Well, the Chinese are notorious for not caring too much about trademarks and copyrights.
It's quite a laugh looking through their stuff, actually.
Yeah, all you need to do is to go take a look at a site like AliExpress, and you could see how they're cloning the major brands of guitars with the headstocks and so on, right? So the Chipsons and I guess they call them Chenders, which is a Chinese Fender. So they haven't been very discreet about doing things like that. But on the other hand, not to knock the Chinese, there are a lot of companies out there, Chinese companies, that are not doing that, and they're actually putting out their own authentic products. And these products they're not bad at all. In fact, the quality on many of them is very good. But like you said, you're in the business of, and I guess we could describe it as more as like a boutique pedal.
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I don't really want to go up to a big level. I
Yeah.
mean, it's only a one man show at the moment as well. I'm doing everything myself, so everything's got to. I can't really build any more than I can in a certain time frame and stuff. So I'm quite comfortable with where it is. It gives me a living and things like that, and yeah, it maybe will eventually grow into something a little bit bigger, but I'm not in any rush to really. I'm quite happy with where it's at.
Now, are you able to get your foot in the door into music stores?
Yeah, I've been to a few all over Scotland, and it's only really the independent ones that I really bother speaking to. It's not really maybe with the chains and stuff like that. It's not really worth it's not really worth my time then to give them a pedal in. They want to give me a really small percentage back. It's just doesn't really work. So if I go into the small independent ones, I can work something out face to face, and they've all been very good. They're all quite pleased to promote someone local who is building that kind of stuff, and yeah, it's been good that way.
Yeah, I prefer going to the smaller music stores. I was just in L.A. recently to go visit family, and there was a music store there that just blew me away. It had been there for 40 years, 50 years or so, and there was just, boy, just a collection of vintage stuff. I love vintage guitars and stuff like that. And it was just nice to be there because you could see different designs of guitars and the different looks. And, you know, in my view, there was a uniqueness about a lot of the instruments that came out decades
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
I mean, even I'm a big collector of the old Japanese lawsuit era guitars. I love that stuff. And I have probably 10 vintage made in Japan guitars that are in beautiful condition these days. Some of them I've had to work on and restore, but they're excellent. I love them. But when you go into the chains, like here in the United States, we have Guitar Center and we have Sam Ash, right? It's all of this homogenized, run-of-the-mill, standard issue stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, that doesn't do it for me. It's just something very static, very sterile, and very boring about what it is that these stores are trying to sell.
Yeah, I can understand that some people want to chase a tone that they love. I want to sound like that musician, or I want to sound like that. So there's always going to be, the market for the run of the mill stuff. But yes, thankfully I've got a lot of people who are wanting to sound very different. They want their own unique sound, and they're looking for something they can't find out there in the market. So even if it's not always just like a tube screamer or distortion pedal. Sometimes somebody will want something with a bit of weird looping in it, with just a weird routing system, so they can have two amps going at the same time, so they can have like an octaved sound, like a kind of bass sound going through one amp and then their guitar. The shape of bands nowadays is very, very different, if you like, to what it was in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s, with the amount of different gear that people are using through guitar amps. And you see people nowadays with a synthesizer and a bigger pedal board than some guitarists. So there's also a market for that, for marketing pedals to people who use synthesizers and keyboards and obviously basses as well.
Now, on your website, I was taking a look, and you have a number of pedals. I'm in the market for a flange and a new phase shifter. So can I get that through you?
I've been meaning to get onto the phasers. Yeah, absolutely. It's not something I have. Like the pedals that are on my website are my bread and butter pedals, if you like, the ones that I've got a big pile of PCBs there for, the printed circuit boards, and then they're just ready to go in the custom orders and everything. But yeah, I mean, how I actually end up adding a pedal to that range is normally because a customer comes to me and says, I want this, can you build this for me? Build it, end up really liking it, thinking, yeah, this is a keeper. We'll put this one into the range as well, So absolutely, that's how a new pedal comes about for me. Normally when somebody says, you don't have this, can you build this? I'm like, let's give it a go. We'll see what we can do.
All right, so I think what I'll do is I'll hit you up after this show for a phase pedal and a flange. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah.
All right. So we'll
Awesome.
we'll give that a shot and see how that turns out, which I'm sure is going to turn out great. Now, Scott, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, a lot of guitar players, there's a lot of quibbling and arguing and debating about when you have a pedal board, the sequencing or the chain of pedals, what goes before what.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you my setup, and you could tell me if you have something different in mind or whether I should tweak mine. But well, first of all, I'll have the guitar will come in first into the tuner.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'll go into the compression box, then my wah pedal, and then from my wah pedal, it'll go through my distortion and overdrive pedals, and then into my chorus and delay. So that's how I do it. I sequence it that way. Does that sound like a reasonable chain?
Yes, that's how I would do it. Again, I start to think of it in that kind of spectrum way, that I start off with, obviously, your pedals like your tuner, and I use an octave pedal as well, an analog octaver, so I keep it very early in the chain, and you want a really clean signal going into like your tuner and an octaver. And then I start to go from kind of light to heavy, my overdrives, my distortions, my fuzzes, and then into the modulation, delay and reverb last. Like what you were saying about Laz earlier, they're notoriously bad for sucking tone and messing up the line, if you like, from guitar to amp. So have you ever tried using a buffer pedal?
No.
Well, it might be worth putting a buffer before or after your wah-wah. It just sometimes smooths it out a wee bit, because wah-wahs are really bad for sucking tone.
Okay.
Especially if you've got a long line of pedals. By the time it goes through all the pedals, it's nowhere near the same signal as it was going in.
Yeah, so put the buffer pedal before the wah pedal?
Yeah, put the buffer pedal quite early in the chain, and it'll just smooth stuff out. Some people, even if you've got a big long chain, I'll send you a couple of buffer pedals over, because they're just wee tiny things. There's just in and out, nothing to it. And I'll send you over those other ones. Put one at the start and the end of your chain, and just even move it about, see what makes the best difference. It does make a bit of a difference that when you're using a big long chain of pedals and you plug it in, it sounds like you've just plugged straight into the amp rather than you're going through all the pedals. So they're definitely worth a try. But pedal, very, very subjective. You see people arguing about it all day. Should I put my overdrive before my fuzz? And it's like, it totally depends what sound you're trying to get. The other one that you see people arguing about is whether to put your pedals in going in the front of your amp, or whether to put them in like in the FX in and out loop at the back of your amp. You see people arguing about that. No, you've got to have the delay in there. I never ever used the FX in and out when I played in bands and stuff like that. It's always been straight into the amp.
Yeah, that's how I do it too. Straight into the amplifier. Now, David Gilmour, I was reading a couple of articles going back a while, and so he would even use a combination of his distortion pedal and his overdrive pedal. So
yeah,
there's another mindset out there that thinks it's either one or the other. So you either use a distortion pedal or you use the overdrive. You can't use them together, but the truth of the matter is you can experiment with the sound, and you can use a distortion and an overdrive pedal together, right?
That's one of the most popular messages I'll get about a fuzz pedal when people say, what pedal did Dave Gilmour use? I want to sound like Dave Gilmour. I say, well, I use this fuzz pedal, but good luck trying to sound like Dave Gilmour. You're going to need more than a pedal.
Yeah, it's all about experimentation, and a lot of folks that just get into playing guitar, and that's something that they have to learn. It's something it's a process I had to learn. I've been playing since I was about 15 years old, so it's been a long time, 45 years. I'm still learning. I mean, there's still things that I'm just kind of futzing around with. And, right? If you stop learning, then that's not a good thing, in my view. You always have to continue to experiment. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to hit on a sound that you're going to use a lot. I have that as a particular guitar sound that I like. When I recorded my CDs during that period of time, I would think, okay, well, I like that sound, and that sound tended to make its way into each individual song. Sometimes I would change it up, obviously, but other times that's what you like. That's why some guitarists and musicians will say, I like the Jimmy Page sound, because Jimmy Page had his sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
David Gilmour has his sound.
Yeah.
So Jimi Hendrix had his sound. Now, speaking of Hendrix used a fuzz pedal a lot, right?
Yeah, the fuzz face.
Yeah, the fuzz face, the round fuzz face. Maybe I'll put a picture up in the show so folks can take a look at what it looks like. And I read an article where back in the day, Jimmy would go to a music store and he would check out maybe 10 of the same pedal because Jimmy had said that because it was the same manufacturer, it did not mean that the pedals generated or put out the same sound.
Yeah.
I thought that kind of interesting because I thought, well, you would think that the process and the circuitry was all standardized, but maybe back then it was a little different. What are your thoughts on that? Was Jimmy just being a little paranoid, or?
No, that's definitely the case because everything was used germanium transistors. The sound can vary so drastically with just a slight difference in those transistors. So getting two that match perfectly is going to give you a very different sound to two that match perfectly on another range. So yeah, absolutely, it's very, very true. You even see it now with all even modern germanium transistors. Very, very difficult to get two sounding exactly the same, especially with the components coming out of China now, because the quality's not really the same with transistors. So as you used to, if they would build a batch of certain transistors, there's one transistor I use, as they would bring them out, there would be 10 different versions of it because it would be on a range, if you like. So now they just sell them as, there you go, that's the transistor under one value, whereas before, when they were being made in America, you would have 10 different versions of that one transistor so you could get the precise value. Whereas now that's just gone. You're just gambling now when you buy these from China. Basically, you buy 50 and you're lucky if you find two. It's what you need to get that sound, it's tricky where that's concerned.
I do fix guitars and repair guitars. A lot of the parts, whether we want to like it or not, are coming out of China.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When we buy bridges and when we buy tailpieces, and especially the electronic componentry, the pots and so on, and it's coming out of China. Is that a good thing in your mind? Or, I mean, because the prices have come down significantly, right? Because it's being mass produced. But what are your thoughts on that? Not good?
Nah, there's a big price to pay elsewhere with that, unfortunately. Even the aluminium enclosures that I would use for a pedal, cast aluminium enclosures, they come from China as well. And where I live in Scotland, there used to be a big industry for metal and stuff like that, and it's all gone, and the same in computer and electronics industry. There was obviously quite a lot of that in America. There was a lot of that in Scotland just 20 years ago as well, and it's all disappeared. So we might get it cheaper, but we're getting a lower standard, and the people in China don't look like they're benefiting much from it either. So
yeah, what I've noticed is componentry like the potentiometers or the pots, the capacitors, especially the pots are, they're functional, but the quality is not what you would get if you bought a more upscale potentiometer. Now, a lot of people will argue that, well, it's just an electronic component, so there's no sense paying more for it. But, I don't know about that. First of all, you run the risk of the cheaper component malfunctioning. That's number one. And in your view, Scott, knowing all about the electronics of this, is there a loss of sound or a loss of signal if you're using cheaper components?
Not necessarily a loss of sound or a loss of signal, but definitely a smaller lifespan. It's something as simple as a foot switch. The ones you're buying from China, they'll have 10,000 less switches before they die than ones you would get elsewhere. So it really is just lifespan. They would maybe work to the same degree once you've got them going, but where they'll last at all. And it becomes people are just happy to throw stuff away because it only costs $40 for the pedal. Well, it's broken, never mind,
Yeah, everything is commodity based. In fact, I have pedals going back to the late 70s and 1980s, and they still work.
Yeah.
So these pedals are 30 or 40 years old. Now, I also wanted to cover with you, Scott, that a big piece of your business or upside of your business is that you make custom pedals, but the customization is not just the componentry of the pedal itself, but it's the artwork.
Yeah.
So you can have your own unique pedal like I have here. Again, folks, I'll show you these pedals. Scott sent both of these over to me, and the artwork is great. Are these silkscreen? How does this work?
That's like a vinyl decal that's put onto that. So it's a vinyl decal that's printed out and then put over it, and then have a good few layers of lacquer just to get it all covered over again. And with some of the enclosures, I do get them printed from like a factory where it's like UV printed, but it's really, really expensive, and I would love to get a UV printer so I could do each individual pedal like that, but it's about 15 grand for one of the printers. So I'm like, can't justify it just now. So at the moment it's just the vinyl decals, but they're very durable, and they look good, you know. So it's, but yeah, again, it's a real uniqueness to it that bands then can get their band logo and stuff like that on it, and it's a bit of a talking point for bands as well. When other bands see their pedal board and stuff like that, it can be kind of advertising in a way for the band as well, you know. It's good advertising for me as well, because it means people share the pedals on social media and stuff like that when they see something interesting, you know. So and I'm not, well, it has its pros and cons, because with the pedal demos, a pedal doesn't ever look the same. So when it's hard to recognise one of my pedals because they look different all the time, you know. It doesn't have that market placement if that's what that one looks like. There's a lot of pedals, like a Boss pedal, so you know exactly what a Boss pedal looks like and stuff like that, you know. So, but on the other hand, people get exactly what they want, and you can get fun and creative on it as well. And it keeps my job interesting as well.
So how do they get the artwork to you, Scott? I mean, do they submit a picture to you, or are there cases when maybe you have somebody who does artwork and they'll do a special design?
Yeah, for the ones that you've got, that was a guy had bought a couple of pedals maybe about 6 months ago, and he said, my girlfriend is a really good artist, she's going to design the artwork for my pedals. So when she sent me the artwork, I was really, really impressed with it. I was like, I love your stuff, you know, it's right up my street. And so when it came to doing your pedals, I got in contact with her and said, would you design this Billy Shears one for me? So some of them, people are just kind of taking pictures of their favourite cartoon stuff like that off the internet, you know, and they want that on a pedal. And in other ones, people are getting really creative. I've had some really wonderful art, hand-drawn art that people have sent me that's beautiful. And then the ones that I have liked, there's a couple of them I've said to the artist, right, do you mind if I give you a few quid and I'll use this as my standard artwork because it's beautiful? And they're like, yeah, because that's good promotion for me. And so yeah, it's nice to be able to work with small artists like that as well.
Now, Scott, your market, is it primarily in the UK, or do you have buyers and purchases from other parts of the world?
Predominantly America, actually. Most of my sales are probably in America. Scotland would be close behind, because people are, when they discover there's a pedal maker in Scotland, they certainly like to try me out. So I've got a lot of customers in Scotland and England as well, through working with a lot of kind of smaller bands that I've been working with for a few years. Done quite well for themselves, you know, so the name's got about in England as well. But no, in America it's been good. I've been quite lucky that there's been a few bands that are quite well known that have picked up the pedals and spoke about them somewhere, you know, so word gets out. When I first started the company, I must only, you know, I'm a third or fourth pedal that I built, and it was a tremolo pedal that I was working on. And at that time, I was going out to Amsterdam with a few friends to see a band called Mars Volta. The bass player for Mars Volta, Juan Alderete, he's got a pedal channel on YouTube. Bit of a pedal fiend, this guy. So I went out and gave him the pedal, just said to the sound guy at the stage, do you mind if I slip back? And it's like currency when you show a sound guy a guitar pedal, you know. He's like, yeah, come in. So, so I'm going to try and get into the habit of doing that more, you know, going to gigs and trying to just speak to the band and saying, I'm a fan of the music, here's a wee gift. And if nothing comes of it, nothing comes of it. But most of the time, you hear something pop back up a wee while later, saying, trying to market the pedal without getting into marketing, if you like, you know, because it's just so horrible.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you were doing your marketing. So is it basically the website and word of mouth?
Yeah, and social media, really. I mean, Facebook was, before I even had the website, when I first started, I was just running it off a Facebook page, and it was really, really good at first, but then they started the boost your post stuff and all that a few years ago, you know, and swallowed all your posts, so you can't really get anything out. Yeah. So Facebook's kind of lost its value for that. Instagram is probably one of the best as far as social media is concerned for me for that, because it's all just pictures then. So yeah, really just that and word of mouth.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll get a lot of word of mouth out with this show.
I'd like to start going to a few more guitar shows. I've done a couple in the past where you can set up a stall at a guitar show, but it's expensive to do as well, and being a one-man band, it can be a bit of a headache, but yeah, I would definitely like to do that some more.
Plus, it's long days whenever you do expos.
Yeah, it's kind of strange for me as well. The one I did in Edinburgh, I was in a small stand and I had Fender beside me, who had like a massive stage with Harley Davidsons and leather couches, and they complained about my volume like several times, you know. Yeah. So I was a little bit out of place.
So Fender complained about the volume coming out of your booth.
Yep. Like, you've got Harley Davidsons on your stage.
So, Scott, how long now have you been in business? I forgot to ask you that question. How long have you been in the business of making pedals?
I started the company about 5.5 years ago. I wasn't at it full time. I was still kind of working part time to try and get the business off. But for the past 3 years, I've been at it full time. I was working part time last year. One of my friends opened up a restaurant, and I was going down there for free food as much as possible. When you got a friend with a restaurant, like, I'll help out. So I was down there quite a lot, and the pedals took a wee holiday for a couple of months last year. But now I came back at it, and I'm glad to get my teeth back into it and get experimenting more, you know, rather than just building the same old pedals. I'm taking a bit more time to do a bit more experimenting and hopefully get something quite interesting out soon.
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, it's been a great discussion, Scott, and I'm really glad that we connected. And I want to thank you again for sending these pedals over. And he refused payment.
Well, as I said, you've been my soundtrack for them. You know, when I'm sitting building pedals, if I'm not listening to music, I'm normally listening to a podcast or a lecture on something. You know, so it's nice to be able to say thanks back for something like that. You know, something you appreciate. So.
Well, thank you, Scott, for the kind words. And it's the reciprocating that really is wonderful, especially for those of us that are in the alternative research / truther community.
Yeah.
So, and that's why, I wanted to do the show with you, because it was the generosity of the pedals is just immense. And I was really taken back by it. So I wanted to be able to get you on the show and also to help you out with your business, because music is really my first love.
Yeah.
As I mentioned when we started the show, I find things like making pedals and effects and stuff like that to be extremely fascinating. So it was really my pleasure to have you come on and talk about it.
That's why I think it's been so interesting, and why so many people have gravitated towards your Paul is Dead research as well, though, because you are a musician and because you're looking at it through the eyes of a genuine Beatle fan and stuff like that, you know. So, you know, a lot of us are going through that, you know, with not just the Beatles, but all of our musician heroes through the years, you know. So it's to not just hear about someone coming at it through a conspiracy kind of way, you know, and coming at it from that side as well is nice. I can understand why people do.
Yeah, it's the hardest part of it, Scott, is that, like you said, I was a Beatle freak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Beatles were gods to me, you know, growing up and listening to their records. And I have a vinyl collection of Beatle records that would blow people's minds. I mean, for years I collected their vinyl from all around the world. And some of the vinyl that I have is very collectible. As I went down this journey and I started looking into what they were all about, you know, the air was taken out of the tire. You know, just a little bit. And people ask me now, and I'll ask you this question maybe before we end the show here. People will ask me, do I still enjoy the music? And the answer is yes, I still enjoy the music because the music is still very good. It's still great music. But here's the caveat. The spark that used to be in me with regard to what and who the Beatles were, based on the story that we were told, right? The myth that we were told, made the music special. But once you get into what really went on, the special piece of it kind of gets stripped away.
Yeah.
And now it's not special to me anymore. Now it's a person coming at it, me being that person, and listening to the music and having an appreciation for the craftsmanship of the music.
Yeah.
You know, the production value of the music, the layering of the tracks, you know, the quality of the construction of the songs. That I still have a tremendous amount of appreciation for. But the glitter that used to be there, it's not there anymore. Sorry.
No, absolutely.
What about yourself? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, and I probably share your opinion there that I can still listen to their music. I listen to it in a very, very different way. But it's not just the case with the Beatles for me. That's been the case with so many bands that there's hardly any bands now that I can kind of look in the eye while I'm listening to. There's very, very few left. But like you say, the musical appreciation of it. I mean, there's a lot of kind of modern bands that are glaringly obvious that they're social engineering tools, but some of the musicianship and like metal bands, not necessarily pop bands, you know. Like, I would say, for an example, would be a band like Slipknot, who when you look at, they're like something from an American wrestling thing, you know. It's like just cartoon. But yeah, you listen to the drummer, and I'm like, oh, wow, the drummer is amazing, you know. So I can still appreciate certain aspects of it. I just don't buy into it the same way.
I know what you're saying because I was in the car yesterday and I had a Led Zeppelin CD and I popped it in, you know. I loved Led Zeppelin too. I still love Led Zeppelin. Jimmy Page was a huge influence on me as a guitar player, Jimi Hendrix, you know. And I'm listening to Stairway to Heaven, and I know from doing the work that there's backmasking in Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
It talks about Satan. And so as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking to myself, gee, is this the verse that has the backmasked message about Satan? You know, whereas before I got into all of this, I just enjoyed the song. You know?
But you know, there's something quite strange to that. I remember having this conversation with someone that I used to listen to music differently before I learned how to play an instrument. You know, and then that almost changes because you listen to what the guitar's doing and the drums doing. Whereas before, it was just like one piece that you listen to. You know, so yeah, it's evolved it even more.
That's a very good point. Yeah, we should talk about that a little bit because I have the same thing. When I go to concerts and I listen to the music, I listen to the music as a guitar player. You know, so I'm listening for how they're doing a bend or, you know, the tone of the guitar. We just went to go see Joe Bonamassa, who is, I love Joe Bonamassa. I mean, I know some people are like, oh, he's just a blues pentatonic guy. Yeah, but he's a great blues pentatonic guy, you know? And his band, along with Joe, they were impeccable. So as I'm sitting there in the audience, I'm listening to Joe play, I'm watching Joe play, taking a look and seeing if I could pick up something new for myself that I could steal from him.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Whereas, you know, the person sitting next to me is not doing that. They're just taking in the listening experience. And sometimes I wish I can do that. Sometimes it's just good to listen, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, so Scott, before we head out, I want to make sure that we send people over to your website. And let me make sure I've got it right. It's Gojira, Gojira.co.uk. Do I have it correct?
Gojira.co.uk.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend to my audience, especially all the musicians out there and the guitar players, to go check out Scott's website. He's got some great stuff there, and if you have a question or you want a unique or specialized pedal, then just reach out to Scott, and between yourself and Scott, you'll work it out, and you'll have yourself a great pedal at a very reasonable price.
Much appreciated, Mike.
You're very welcome, Scott. And again, at the end of this video, what I'll do is I'll do a sound demonstration with your pedals. I'll try to get that done either today or tomorrow. And I'll see you on Facebook. Okay?
Nice one. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, Scott. Have a great day.
You too, my friend. Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
And that concludes a discussion with Scott, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. As mentioned during the show, I have added 2 short clips of me demonstrating the 808 and the distortion pedal. In the first video, I'm testing the 808 Tube Screamer with my Telecaster. The Tele is equipped with a set of Fender Texas Special pickups. In the second clip, I'm testing the distortion pedal and playing my Gibson Les Paul Standard T. The amp is an acoustic G35 FX. I dialed in a little bit of delay and reverb to fill out the sound. I'm recording using my computer mic, which is a CAD U37 and the software is Audacity. No other effects or enhancements were applied to the guitar or the video. My intent was to keep the demo as realistic as possible so we can hear the pedals as we would in real life playing at home or in a band. So here are the 2 clips, and please check out Scott's website and his Gojira Fx pedals. Thanks for listening.